of Black Week, we are seeing today something that we never ever saw in this country. We have been accustomed to elections at proper times, and those times have been defined by the Constitution and the law. Now we have, for the first time, a revolutionary doctrine. That is, elections are not an essential expense. We had a remarkable circular issued a couple of days ago. Money can be utilized only for essential expenses, and what is essential is defined. Elections are not included in that definition. Therefore, if an election is to be held, the resources for that election have to be specifically and explicitly approved by the Minister of Finance. Without such approval, elections cannot be held. Now we have been told that elections will not be held this year. That attempt is made. It will not succeed. The people of this country will not allow that to happen. But now, the new doctrine is that the holding of elections is a matter of discretion. Who exercises that discretion? The Minister of Finance. The Minister of Finance is a practicing politician. He is the leader of a political party that is contesting the election in opposition to other political parties. Now, at his sole discretion, a practicing politician will decide when, if at all, elections are going to be held. An objective professional survey which has been conducted in this country has come to the conclusion that the government's threshold of support as we speak now is no more than 10%. So 90% of the people want the government to go home. That is a reality which we are aware of. The government knows, the people knows. That is a reality. 10% support. That's all that the government has. Now it is the government that is going to decide when the next election is going to be held. It is a very simple doctrine. If you think you are going to win the election, you will hold the election. If you are pretty certain that you are going to come down in a humiliating defeat, you do not hold the election. In that situation, does any rational person in this country believe that the presidential election is going to be held next year? Certainly not. It won't happen if we allow this dangerous precedent to take root and to become entrenched in this country. That is why we will do everything in our power to protect the sacred franchise of the people of Sri Lanka. Now it is said, why blame the government? The postal election was to have been held on the 22nd, 23rd, 24th and the 28th of February. Now it has been postponed indefinitely. So it is being said this is not a government decision, this is a decision by the Elections Commission. You go and ask the Elections Commission. Complete falsehood, a complete distortion of the truth. The Elections Commission did everything in its power to fulfill its constitutional duty and to hold this election. But they were thwarted at every point. There were 20 different attempts that were made to prevent this election from happening. 20. This last one was the 21st attempt. A situation was deliberately created in which the commission found it not just difficult, but indeed impossible to hold this election. To print ballot papers, you need police protection, obviously. Police protection has always been made available to the government printer during the printing of ballot papers. The government printer asked for 60 police officers and was given only 3 police officers. Mr. C.D. Vikramaratne, the Inspector General of Police, who played a major role in collaborating with the government in not holding this election, the IGP presented to the Elections Commission a highly inflated estimate of the resources that would be required to provide police protection. Comparing with the estimate provided by the Inspector General of Police for the parliamentary election that was held in August 2020, the demand was for 6 times, no less than 6 times, what the police wanted at the time the 2020 parliamentary election was conducted. So the obvious purpose is to prevent this election from being held. Then the government printer wanted 410 million rupees paid upfront. This is not a commercial order to print invitations for a wedding. We have ballot papers to fulfill a fundamental constitutional requirement. Now, never in our history has a government printer asked for full payment at the very outset. When the parliamentary election of August 2020 was conducted, the bill was settled 2.5 months later. There have been instances in the history of elections in this country when the settlement of the bill was made 6 months after the election was concluded. The consistent practice has been that about 70% of the bill is settled long after the election is held. Now the Elections Commission asked for not 10 billion rupees, they asked for about 770 million rupees for their immediate expenses. All they were given was 165 million rupees. So a situation was contrived to ensure that this election would not be held. And the entire responsibility for that rests fairly and squarely on the shoulders of the government and on nobody else. Who are the major collaborators in what I would call this criminal enterprise? I don't think we should mince our words. This is criminal. And who are the criminals who participated in this exercise? I'm saying the major collaborator is none other than the Secretary to the Treasury, Secretary to the Ministry of Finance, Mr. Mahinda Siriwardena. He is in flagrant breach of obligations compulsorily imposed upon him by the Constitution of Sri Lanka. The Parliament of this country, at the budget in December last year, allocated 10 billion rupees for the conduct of this election. Mr. Siriwardena is the custodian, the trustee of public money. This money does not belong to his masters, the government of this country. It belongs to the people of Sri Lanka. Siriwardena is duty bound to make available to the Election Commission the money specifically and explicitly voted by Parliament for the purpose of holding this election, for no other purpose. Not to hold tamashas, not to have independent celebrations, not to appoint 39 state ministers and to go on appointing other cabinet ministers, not for all those self-gratifying activities. Specific sum of money allocated by Parliament for the conduct of elections, it is a duty of the Secretary of the Ministry of Finance to ensure that Parliament's intention is fulfilled, the intention of the Supreme Legislature of this land. Now, he cannot hide behind the defense of superior orders. He cannot come to a court of law and say, what can I do? I was forced to do this. I was given orders. All I did was to carry out these orders that I was given. It is a futile defense, vacuous, lacking in content and validity. It is a firmly established principle in the law of this country and indeed in the law of all civilized countries that an official who deliberately carries out an illegal order is himself responsible for all the consequences that emanate from his calculated and deliberate action. There's no question about that. That's a principle that is crystal clear. It is a principle that has been very emphatically endorsed and fortified by the unanimous judgment of 7 judges of the Supreme Court in the Easter Sunday case, the pivot of which is the concept of personal responsibility. Mahinda Siriwardena is personally responsible for the part, the very major, the cardinal role that he played in depriving the people of our country of their cherished right of suffrage. He must answer for those consequences. And we tell the people of our country that we accept the duty of bringing Siriwardena at an appropriate time, in an appropriate way, before the courts of the Republic. And he will have to bear the brunt of what he has done, for which there is no excuse whatsoever. He has made his decision. He must now bear the consequences. No justification whatsoever, either on the legal or the moral plane. The next diabolical attempt on the part of this government is to send the current Elections Commission home and to substitute for it a new election commission. Preposterous, outrageous, would not even be conceived of in any democratic country, in any part of the world. An election has been declared. It is ongoing. Deposits have been accepted, nominations have closed. The process that has begun will reach its culmination only after the election is held, and indeed not even then. After the names of the victorious candidates, their respective political parties, when all this information is published in a gazette, it is only then that the election process reaches its end. Until then, there is absolutely no justification for replacing the current Elections Commission with another Elections Commission. We utterly condemn it as unthinkable. Now, the Constitutional Council inserted advertisements in the media calling for applications for the posts of chairmen and members of the so-called independent commissions, including the Elections Commission. The advertisements appeared on the 1st of February. A period of 15 days was given. So that period expired on the 15th of February. It is then that the process of evaluation can begin. There are 9 independent commissions, 9. And there are hundreds of applications that have been received. Now, if the Constitutional Council is to do its job properly, it will have to take time to evaluate these applications. It must be done with a sense of gravitas, with some seriousness of purpose. It cannot be hurried for a partisan political purpose. There are some special factors which are relevant to this particular situation, things that are unprecedented in the history of this country. No fewer than 3 members of the Election Commission received death threats. Never happened in the history of our country. Now, 14 members of Parliament have submitted a motion to the Speaker calling for the appointment of a select committee to probe, believe it or not, the Elections Commission itself. The Elections Commission has been subjected to enormous torment, I would say mental torture, tremendous, unbelievable stress and strain. Now that is to be further exacerbated by this exposure to the proceedings of a Parliament Select Committee, which cannot be defended by any rational argument whatsoever. Indeed, I would go so far as to say that if this is how the Parliament of Sri Lanka, if the Speaker and the Parliament propose to treat what are called independent commissions in this way, there are no independent commissions. Independence is a myth. It does not exist in reality. So if this were to continue, we would have to come to the reluctant conclusion that the whole expedient of independent commissions in this country has been a dismal failure. I do hope that we will not have to reach that unfortunate conclusion. The international community is paying special attention to the events that are unfolding in this country. Now yesterday we had an extraordinary statement made by the government. The government said, our focus very clearly is on economic recovery and restoration. That's what we are intent on doing. Elections can wait. They can wait for another year. This is a novel and startling theory. Of course, economic recovery is important. It must go hand in hand with the nurturing, the protection of the democratic process, which is the lifeblood of this nation. We can't possibly say we will bury democracy, no elections, that's a thing of the past. Something very trivial. We can forget about it. Let's concentrate all our energies on economic development, and we adopt a very cavalier, light-hearted attitude to democracy and to elections in this country. It is an argument which has only to be stated for its absurdity and indeed for its disastrous consequences to become immediately apparent. What is this economic restoration that we are talking of? We are paying lip service to this. It means nothing at all. Far from inviting new investment, what is actually happening on the ground? Mitsubishi Corporation, a very important Japanese company which has made a vital contribution to the economic development of this country through infrastructure, principally. What is happening? After 6 long decades, Mitsubishi has decided to quit the shores of this island. Taisei Corporation has come to a similar decision. His Excellency, the German ambassador, has stated that large numbers of German companies are contemplating leaving this country. So far from receiving new investment, we are losing even the investment that we had for a long time in this country. There's a lot of talk of the International Monetary Fund, what it is going to do for us today, tomorrow, or next month, the following month. Not $1 has come into this country since this government was formed in July last year. That is the dismal reality, not $1, except all the talk, all the hype, all the speculation and promises. But a bird in the hand, not $1, has come into the country. Sri Lanka is a signatory to numerous international conventions by which we are bound. Principally the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, the pivot, the heart and soul of which is elections, the right of suffrage. Now we are saying, forget about elections, that's not important, it's not an essential expense. If that is the case, we are not entitled to the continuation of GSP+. What about negotiations with the International Monetary Fund? They have repeatedly said that a popular mandate is important. They are comfortable, they find congenial only negotiations with a government which is supported by a popular mandate because their resources are made available to the people of a country through the channel, through the conduit of a government. So in short, what we are seeing today is the inexorable march to a totalitarian state. Suppression of protest, indiscriminate use of the Prevention of Terrorism Act, disproportionate methods used to stifle legitimate dissent. Why are these Japanese companies, why are these German companies quitting this island? Because they have come to the conclusion that the environment that is prevailing today is not conducive to their commercial operations. That is the sad reality that we are confronted with today. Today, Monday, the 20th of February, is a red letter day in our country. It's a day of enormous significance. Today, the President of Sri Lanka, the Honorable Ranil Wickremesinghe, becomes legally empowered to dissolve Parliament. From today, anytime at all, at his discretion, he can dissolve the present Parliament. We strongly believe that that is the course of action that he should embark upon. This Parliament was elected in August 2020. A lot of water has flowed under the bridge since then. Events of momentous significance without parallel at any time in the history of our country have taken place since the election of the present Parliament. A president with an overwhelming mandate has been driven not only out of office, but out of this country. He had to flee this country. It didn't stop there. The entire cabinet of ministers, headed by the Prime Minister, had to resign. They were forced to resign. Now, these are dramatic events, the like of which we have never seen in this country. It is therefore all too evident that the present Parliament does not any longer represent current public opinion. It is obsolete. It has passed its validity period. This is very apparent when you sit in Parliament listening to debates that take place there. You're all too conscious of the fact that there is a vivid contrast between the atmosphere of Parliament and the prevailing sentiment in the country at large. Now, yesterday we were told that the first priority is economic development, the second priority is economic development, the third priority is economic development. This is what we were told yesterday. Right. So to achieve economic development, not just in speeches and aspirations, but on the ground, to achieve it on the ground, the first requirement is legitimacy. The decisions that are made, the policies that are implemented with a view to furthering economic development must reflect the will of the people. That is the substance of legitimacy. That is the core of the mandate. It is the foundation of the social contract. So, in order to move forward at all and to find practical solutions to any of the burning issues that confront the country today, we must have a Parliament which is a mirror of public opinion. What we have today is a caricature of democracy. It is a government that has come into being because of a deal in Parliament with which the people of the country had nothing whatsoever to do. That situation has to be corrected as the first and essential condition for economic regeneration. It is therefore our firm conviction that the dissolution of this Parliament is absolutely necessary, and the people of our country have to be given the opportunity of electing a Parliament of their choice, a Parliament that would genuinely and spontaneously reflect the wishes, the vision, and the aspirations of the people of Sri Lanka.